Today's video. This is a B1 level lesson on classroom language and skills, and today we're going to be talking about asking questions. All right, so what would you say if you didn't hear what your teacher said, or if you don't understand a concept that you are learning, or you are confused about something that the teacher just said? So are you going to complete each question with the correct question word? You can pause the video and try that on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So number 1, can you help me with number 8? Number 2, how did you get that answer? Number 3, can you please explain the last point again? Number 4, what are we supposed to do again? Number 5, what page are we on? Number 6, what does that word mean? Number 7, how do you spell that? And number 8, why did you use that formula? All right, now we're going to talk about asking for clarification. So students can ask a teacher or a classmate to clarify information. So what's the meaning of clarify? Well, clarify is sort of related to the word clear. So to clarify is to make something clear. And so what are some ways that you could ask someone to clarify? Well, you can pause the video and read this dialogue and then answer that question. Or you can follow along as I read. So excuse me, could you please repeat that? No problem. I said that the test will be open book. What does that mean? It means that you can use your textbook and notes during the test. Did you say that we could use our notes? That's right. Could we create a study guide to use? Yes, you can use a study guide. So you can notice that the students asked the teacher to clarify in a number of ways. Could you repeat that? What does that mean? Did you say that? And could we? Those are all ways to clarify what was said by the teacher in the line before. All right, so now we want to match the beginning of the question with the correct ending. Again, you can pause the video and try this on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. Okay, so number 1, what do you mean? Number 2, could you say you might say, could you say that again, please? Or could you say that again, please? I'm sorry, but could you explain that in another way? When you said next Tuesday, does that mean tomorrow or next week? Excuse me, could you clarify? Could you repeat the last thing you said? Could you give us an example? What does urbanization mean? And what are we supposed to do again? Now, in more informal communication, you can say what or huh or what you say, but that's probably not appropriate in school with the teacher. Some of these can sound a little rude, so you want to be very careful in using these because they would only be with like your closest friends that you would use these methods of asking for clarification. All right, we're going to read what each teacher says, and then I'd like you to make up a clarifying question for the teacher. So inside each cell, atoms make up molecules, which make up cell organelles and structures. In multicellular organisms, similar cells form tissues, and tissues create organs such as the heart and lungs. So, possible questions. Could you say that again, please? Or maybe I'm sorry. Um, could you explain that in another way? Um, could you repeat? You might ask what does multicellular mean? So those would be some possible clarifying questions. All right, again, the teacher says a club is doing a raffle as a fundraiser. The cost of participating in the raffle is given by the following expression 5x plus 3, where x represents the number of tickets someone purchases. How much does it cost for one person to buy 2 tickets? So again, you could ask one of these clarifying questions. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. All right, so now I'm going to read an explanation as a history teacher, and you'll need to listen very carefully and then decide whether or not you need to ask some clarifying questions. So we have 3 branches of government: executive, which is headed by the president, legislative, which is Congress, and judicial, which is the Supreme Court. And with this, we have separation of powers so that one branch cannot take over the others. The legislative branch, Congress, creates and passes laws. The executive branch, headed by the president, is supposed to execute, run the government based on the laws that Congress passes. And the judicial branch decides whether things like laws that decides whether things like laws that Congress is passing or actions that the executive branch is taking are constitutional. All right, so if you can think of some clarifying questions and leave those for me in the comments, that will be some good practice. All right, so we'll start sharing again. All right, now we'll read through this dialogue again and then look at the phrases in bold and see if we can understand what they mean. You can either pause the video and read on your own or follow along as I read. So that's how you find the hypotenuse of the triangle. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, but I'm a bit lost. Can you explain again what the hypotenuse is? Sure, the hypotenuse is the longest side of a right triangle. Let's look at this triangle. It is a right triangle because these 2 sides form a 90-degree angle. This side right here is the hypotenuse. So to find the length of the hypotenuse, we need to use that equation. Yes, if the triangle has 2 sides that form a right or 90-degree angle, we can use the Pythagorean theorem to find the length of the sides. Okay, can we go over that formula again? Sure. I'll give you another example to make it clear. So here, make sense? The teacher is just asking, do they understand? I'm a bit lost. The student means that they're confused or it doesn't make sense. They don't understand. Go over is to repeat, and to make it clear is again to explain it in a way that the student can understand. All right, so now we're going to try to create some questions. And remember that when creating a question, we typically switch the order of the subject and the verb. And note that the word please can go in a few different places. It can sometimes go at the end, or it can come in the middle of the sentence. So go ahead and try these on your own, and then restart when you're ready to check your answers. So number one, could you please speak a little more slowly? You could also put please at the end. Could you speak a little more slowly, please? Okay, number two, can you explain a little more about that? Number three, could you give me an example? Number four, could you put that in other words? And what does it mean when you say, and then this would you would fill in the word that you need clarified. All right, question tags. So a question tag can be used to clarify information. A question tag comes after a statement that the speaker believes is true. So here are some examples. You are in my history class, aren't you? And one important rule to remember is if the statement is positive, then the question tag is negative. So you are is positive, so the tag question has to be aren't you? The teacher isn't planning to collect the homework, is she? So here, if the statement is negative, isn't, then the question tag is positive, is. So to create a question tag, we first need to find the auxiliary verb. Auxiliary verbs are forms of the verb to be, do, or have, or modal verbs like can, could, should, will, and would. An auxiliary verb is also referred to sometimes as a helping verb. So look at the sentences below, and do they have auxiliary verbs? And if yes, then what is it? So the project is due on Friday. So is the verb, and it's a form of the verb to be. So this one does have an auxiliary verb. Class starts at 8 a.m. Well, starts isn't any of these, so this one is no. The teacher doesn't accept late homework. Here we have doesn't, which is a form of do. So this one has an auxiliary verb. She hasn't taken chemistry yet. Again, hasn't is a form of the verb have. So this one has an auxiliary verb. He has pop quizzes every week. Again, has is a form of have. We will start a new topic on Monday. Will is a modal verb. They didn't take the bus today. So didn't is a form of do. So this one has an auxiliary verb. And she can speak 3 languages. Can is a modal verb. All right, if there is no auxiliary verb in the sentence, then we use do or don't in the question tag. So the exam is on Friday, isn't it? So here, as we said, the form of to be is a modal verb. And so the negative form of is isn't. So because this is positive, we use the negative question tag. All students need to pass algebra to graduate, don't they? So here, this sentence does not have an auxiliary verb. Need is just the main verb. So we have to use a form of do in the question tag, and it's positive, so that's why we use the negative don't. You can speak Spanish, can't you? So here, can is a modal verb, which is a type of auxiliary verb. Again, here, can is positive, so we use the negative can't in the question tag. And she missed the test, didn't she? Here, this sentence does not have an auxiliary verb, so we have to use a form of did. Um, and here it's positive, so we have to use the negative past tense of do, which is didn't. All right, so we're going to complete each sentence with a question tag. And this is kind of a flow chart that we go through to help us decide um, which kind of question tag that we need. Now, I know this looks a little confusing, so we'll walk through this one together step by step. All right, so number one, you need to multiply the numbers first. All right, so we find the verb need. So need is not an auxiliary verb. Is the statement present or past tense? Well, need is present. Is the statement positive or negative? Well, it's positive. So then we would use don't. So you need to multiply the numbers together first, don't you? All right, again, we can work with a partner. So does it have an auxiliary verb? Yes. Can is the auxiliary verb. Is the statement positive or negative? We can work as positive. Is it in the present, past, or future tense? It's in the present. And so we use the present negative form. So we can work with a partner, can't we? Right here, there is an extra help session after school today. Is a form of to be, so there is a auxiliary verb. Positive or negative, there is positive, and it is present tense. So the negative of is would be isn't there. Okay, you tutored math last year. Tutored is our verb, but it's not an auxiliary verb. Tutored is in the past tense. The statement is positive, and so we use didn't in the question tag. So didn't you? You weren't in class yesterday. Okay, this one is a little tricky. Does the statement have an auxiliary verb? Well, weren't is the past tense of the verb to be, so it does have an auxiliary verb. Is it positive or negative? It's negative, you weren't, and it's past tense, so we use the past tense in the positive form. So you weren't in class yesterday, were you? Okay, here the test will be multiple choice. So will is a modal, so this does have an auxiliary verb. Positive or negative, it's positive. It's future, and so we have to use the negative form of will, which is won't. So won't it? Here, you have never been late to class. So have is an auxiliary verb. So we're over on this side of the equation. Um, have is positive. This is present perfect. So you would have to use, you have never been late for class, have you? So this one's a little different because it's not present, past, future negatives. I'm not sure why they included this one, um, but it's a little tricky because it's present perfect. Okay, this experiment shouldn't work like that. So shouldn't is an auxiliary verb 'cause it's a modal. It's negative. It's present. And so we would use the positive. Um, the experiment shouldn't work like that, should it? All right, so now we're going to read the short conversations between a teacher and students. Which expressions does the teacher use to clarify, and what expressions does the teacher use to check for understanding? So, excuse me, but could you explain that one more time? Sure, I don't think I explained it very well. To put it another way, so here the expression to put it another way is the clarifying phrase. Has everyone got it so far? Well, that would be to check for understanding. Am I going through it too quickly? That would be to check for understanding. Excuse me, can you give us more details? Okay, to show you what I mean, let's look at this image. That's to clarify. Can you give us another example? Yes, of course. Let's try this one. That's also to clarify. I'm sorry, but I didn't understand that. Let's see. In other words, that's also a clarifying statement. Okay, so now you can create questions to match the responses below, and then practice asking for some clarifying, asking and answering uh, the questions and clarifying. So we'll do one as an example. What is your phone number? 975 436 9064. Sorry, could you repeat that? Sure, it's 975 436 9064. And so you can try that with the rest of these. First, figure out the question, then the answer, and then ask a clarifying question, and then answer that clarifying question. All right, again, we're going to stop sharing for just a second. So I'm going to read some statements out loud, and you're going to listen. It's probably not a good way to do this. Let's see. Hold on, let me figure out how to do this so that you can see the responses, but you can't see what I am reading from. All right, so let's do share. Okay, here we go. Oh, let's see. I can't find my... Oh, here we go. All right. Sorry. One moment. I should have practiced this beforehand. Sorry about that. Okay, so I'm going to read a statement, and then you're going to choose which of these you think is the best response. Okay, so number one, I said 8 a.m., not 8 p.m. So which one do you think would be the correct response to that? Well, probably here. Oh, I misunderstood. Number two, I don't get it. I don't get it. So the teacher would probably respond with, okay, let me explain it again. Number three, you said that the test was on Thursday, right? You said that the test was on Thursday, right? That's correct. Number four, I'm lost. I'm lost. Well, let me rephrase that. Number five, could you review number four? Could you review number four? Yes, of course. Number six, can you repeat the last thing you said? Could you repeat the last thing you said? Sure, I can. And number seven, does that make sense? Yes, it's clear. All right, so imagine that you're confused about the situations below. How can you ask for help? So the teacher asks you to open your textbook and turn to a page, but you didn't hear the number. So what might you say? Maybe could you repeat the last thing you said? Or could you tell me the page number again? You're confused about how your teacher found the answer to a math problem. So here, how did you get that answer? You cannot see what the teacher wrote on the board. Maybe could you write that a little bigger, please? Or I'm lost. You don't understand an important word in the text you're reading. So for this one, you might ask what is the meaning and then the word that you're confused about. So that brings us to the end of today's video. Please like, subscribe, share, and if you have any questions, leave those for me in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.